One of the biggest things that was another shocker was Alabama sticks as the number 9 seed. I don't think I was expecting them to get taken out of the college football playoffs, although I think that in my opinion, you either had to leave both Alabama and BYU in or take both Alabama and BYU out after losing their championship games the way that they did. And then you could have had the conversation of either both in or both out for both Alabama and BYU, and then Notre Dame, Miami. I think that would have made it a lot more cleaner. I think you would have had a lot less controversy, but I think the committee, aka ESPN, probably doesn't like the fact that there's no controversy and the fact that, folks like us are talking about it today. So there's probably a reason why they split it down the middle. But Alabama, being in the college football playoffs, the number 9 seed, they're going to go take on Oklahoma in the first round. To me, this doesn't make sense that they're sitting at the 9. They should at least dropped one position if they are going to stay in there at all, because you lost to Georgia pretty handily in the SEC championship. And yes, I know you won in Athens. You split the thing. There is a small difference with you splitting the series between Georgia and Alabama compared to BYU losing to Texas Tech twice. Right? Might I remind Alabama folks that you did lose to Florida State, but Alabama, do they deserve to be in the college football playoffs?
No, I think if you're asking me, and it really does come down to the bowl game situation or the conference championship situation. Bama lost that game 28-7. Do you know how many rushing yards they had?
Not a lot. I know that.
They had -3 rushing yards in that game. So it's not like it was, you're exactly right. It wasn't a competitive game. And honestly, that touchdown that Alabama had just kind of felt fluky. That I did catch a little bit of that game. To me, this comes down to, Bama shouldn't have made it. But what are we doing with conference championship games? That's really where I land on this, because BYU, like we just talked about, an 11-1 team goes to their conference championship game and is penalized for losing. Now, if you're in the SEC, that doesn't happen. But I don't like the way that, like, you should at least get some benefit of the doubt for being the top 2 team from your conference. Like, I have a hard time believing, and I do love the Cinderella story. I have a hard time believing that JMU or Tulane is a better football team than BYU. I understand it's the way the format works, and I understand that by, like, all accounts, technically that's not really where the problem lies. It's just hard for me to believe. Like, what is the actual point of the playoff if we're, like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the conference championship weekend needs to be revisited, and I think you need to have a new look at it. I was completely for, I should say, heading into this year when they talked about expanding this playoffs. When, of course, last year with the entire thing happening with teams losing in their conference championships, still staying in the SMU conversation, right? That kind of whole thing happened. If you look back a few years ago when it was the 14 playoff, I am old enough to remember Georgia losing in their SEC championship game as the number 1 seed. And they wound up moving down to the 6th seed and missing out completely of the 14 playoff.
I just want to add really quickly, that year, I would argue Georgia was snubbed worse than Florida State was.
Oh, yeah, you could definitely make that argument for sure, because especially if you're making this whole conversation. Georgia utilized that to, kick the crap out of Florida State. They utilized that to advocate for fixing the playoffs for the future. And that's what happened with, we shouldn't punish or reward conference champions. Well, you could say a reward, but we shouldn't punish conference champions for losing their game, unless you're in the Big 12, of course, because of course BYU didn't make the college football playoffs. It's hard for you to make that kind of conversation or anything like that. But what I'm saying here is, I am now against conference championships. I used to be all for them. I used to be advocate for them, saying you need to fight for everything you possibly can. You need to make sure you can get those trophies for your conference matter. I don't know if they matter anymore. In this new realm of college athletics, in this new realm of college football, with the NIL, with the transfer portal, with people leaving bowl games, we're seeing as well. They're not making postseason football matter. It only matters if you make the 12-team playoff. And it doesn't matter if you won your championship. It doesn't matter if you're going to hold on to that. I mean, how many people remember who won the SEC championship game a couple of years ago, but you can remember who won the national championship, right? It's the 12 teams that matter right now. And if you miss that, then why would you compete in a bowl game? I think you have to move. And I was so against this at the beginning of the season, but my mind has completely shifted. I think you have to move to, instead of having championship weekend, you do some sort of play-in tournament to get the right teams into that 12-team playoff, or 14 or 16, whatever the expansion inevitably becomes, and move away from this. And maybe get away from auto bids, only get the 12, 14, 16 best teams in the country. And if that means you also move to a G6 only playoff tournament as well, you did it with FCS, maybe you do it G6. I think you solve a lot of problems. You're not going to get a lot of people happy with that on the money side, but you would certainly prove that you have the best teams battling for a national championship.
I agree with you. Let me just say this really quick. It will never happen because, for one, the money, and for two, they want people talking about it. They want us having this conversation. So, as much as I am 1,000,000% on the same page as you are, it just will never happen. And so, I did take a quick look at, like, how could this even be fixed? Like, the first thought I had was, let's move conference championship. Let's not move conference championship. Let's move the final ranking up a week. Okay. So then the conference championship is now literally it doesn't matter because the conference championship doesn't give you a bye anyway, right? That was last season. Then they shifted it so the top 4 teams just get a bye. I don't know if that's the right answer, but I don't think it matters either way. I think that the way that the committee looks at it is it's just an opportunity to do what they want. So then I was like, well, I think maybe the best thing we can do is get as close to the numbers as possible and literally just go buy a formula and avoid this whole situation where they want an SEC team in. Greg Sankey's calling for 7 SEC schools in the 12-team playoff, over half. Alabama, I cannot give you a super good reason why they're in other than because of the logo on their helmet. So the closer we get to numbers, the closer we probably are to a more correct system. But then even so, we have this problem with the rest of college football where Notre Dame's going to drop out if their numbers aren't good enough. I think the problem is all of college football has shifted. Like, there is now this championship or literally bust mentality whereas 10, 15 years ago you just kind of played, and if you lost a game, you were out of the championship hopes, but you got a really good bowl game and you got to play a full season, and everyone got better at football and everyone came closer together on the team, and then you move on to next season. That's not how it works anymore.
Do you think one of the reasons they didn't drop in seeding, and this is something that I've been kind of pondering looking at the bracket over and over again. Let's pull the bracket up so I can talk about this conversation here. Do you think the reason they didn't drop in seeding is because they didn't want them to become the 10 seed and have to face Georgia potentially again in a game before the national championship game? Because we've already seen that game happen twice. The only way it happens twice is if it's in the national championship. Do you think they put them on the other side of the bracket on purpose, and that's why they didn't move them? You got to think those kind of conversations happen when it comes to the committee, when they're thinking about, well, we don't want to put them as the 10 seed because they can potentially take on Georgia again. And we don't want that. We've already seen that happen. I know that we're seeing Tulane and Ole Miss happen in the first round. We saw, happen in the regular season, but I don't think you could have changed that. I think with the conference championship, with the 11 and 12 seeds, I don't think you could have made that move any other way. But for Bama, you could have easily slid them to the 10 seed. It would have made a lot of sense, even with Miami above them because of them losing in the SEC championship game. But I think maybe they moved them over there so they could take on Oklahoma. Maybe do they have a good chance against Indiana? Do they have a good chance against Texas Tech if they run that? I mean, Alabama, you could have a better chance potentially to make the national championship now as a 9 seed.
I would, yeah. I mean, maybe. To answer your question, yes, I think that they did that on purpose. I think they kept them away from Georgia. But I question you with this one. Is that right? Is that the right play? Because on some level, they have played Georgia twice. Like, just if we're looking at this as like zoomed out as we possibly can, as disconnected as we can, to prevent or to present the best product, wouldn't that be the right play? I'm just genuinely asking what your opinion is, because I think you could probably make an argument for both sides.
No, I think you're right. I think you generally put them in the right spot. You put them as a 10 seed. I personally think they should have been out. I think if
you're going to put first, and then if you're going to put them in.
Yeah, if you're going to put Miami and Alabama in, to me, it doesn't make sense. It should have been one or the other. It should have been Alabama and BYU, or it should have been Miami and Notre Dame. That was my mindset going into Selection Sunday. And the fact they went down the middle was just asking for us to do a segment on it. That's what really all they were asking for us to do, and talk about it for the next week or 2 weeks, because we got Army-Navy this week before we even start college football playoffs. And that's a whole different conversation. I love Army-Navy game, but again, going back to trying to adapt to this new world of the college football playoffs, you have to wait 2 weeks for the first round, 3 weeks if you have a bye. We saw all teams with bye lose their first game last year. Now they got to wait
All
3
the time
weeks.
off.
All that time off. Maybe we consider moving Army Navy to a different slot. Maybe I saw somebody say put it on the Friday of week 0 instead of at the end of the season. I don't know what I think about that, but I mean, starting the season Army Navy doesn't sound terrible. The weather would be different. I don't know if you'd want that. Army Navy game is one of my most favorite games of all the season. I mean, I make chili. I sit back. I chill. It's to me, it's good chili. It's good
The
chili.
chili's the right play. I like that.
It is. Oh, 100%. And I grew up in a military family. I am a military veteran. We used to go to the VFW and the American Legion as kids, and we'd have meatball subs, pulled pork sandwiches. I mean, you'd sit there, you'd watch the game, insane stuff. But I think you might have to maybe move on from changing the Army Navy game to a different time with this new college football playoffs. I really do.